The sky was clear, a peaceful blue, when the first sign of the alien fleet appeared. At first it was just a small speck in the sky, but it quickly grew larger. People around the world began to notice something strange. The object was not a plane, not a satellite, but something much, much bigger. It moved steadily, faster than any human-made craft. Cities around the world stopped in their tracks, people staring up at the sky, wondering what was happening. Then the news broke. The aliens had arrived. The world went silent. News stations broadcasted the same image, a dark, enormous ship, the size of a mountain, hovering above Earth. The alien ship didn't speak, didn't announce itself. It simply hovered there, as if waiting, looming over every country, casting a shadow of uncertainty. It wasn't until the ship's weapons were activated that humanity realized how much danger they were in. The first blast came from the alien ship, striking the city of New York. In an instant, the city was consumed in a massive explosion. Buildings crumbled, streets cracked, and the skyline vanished in a cloud of dust and smoke. The alien ship's attack was swift and devastating. Around the world, panic spread. People fled, but where could they go? No one had ever seen anything like this before. The alien ship moved slowly, methodically, unleashing powerful energy blasts that shattered cities, burned forests, and destroyed infrastructure. It seemed as though nothing could stop it. For days, humanity watched in horror, powerless to do anything but brace for what was coming next. Governments scrambled to respond, but it was clear that they were no match for the alien technology. The most advanced weapons on Earth were no more than toys in comparison. Fighter jets launched to intercept the alien craft, but they were easily swatted away. Tanks rolled into cities in an attempt to fight back, but their shells had no effect. The aliens' weapons were too powerful, too precise. The Earth seemed helpless against the might of this new enemy. The world's leaders met in secret, knowing that they were facing an existential threat. There was no plan, no strategy, nothing that could truly prepare them for what was happening. In the midst of all the chaos, a small group of people gathered in an underground bunker in the heart of Washington, D.C. They were not soldiers, nor were they politicians. They were everyday people, engineers, scientists, ordinary citizens, who had seen what had happened and realized something the rest of the world hadn't. The aliens had underestimated humanity. As the invaders continued their attack, humanity had begun to notice something strange. The aliens were powerful, but they were also arrogant. They were not interested in negotiation or understanding. They were here to conquer. They didn't care about Earth's people or history. To them, humans were just another species to be wiped out. What the aliens didn't know was that humanity had something they didn't: resourcefulness. While the world's military was busy scrambling to fight back with conventional weapons, the small group of individuals in the underground bunker began to put together a plan. They didn't have advanced weapons, but they had their minds. The idea they came up with was simple, yet brilliant. Every object on Earth, no matter how ordinary, could become a weapon in humanity's hands. Tools, vehicles, machinery, even food. Everything could be used to fight back. They didn't need the aliens' technology. They needed to think differently. They needed to use what they had. The first test was a success. A group of resistance fighters managed to create an improvised explosive device from simple materials they found in the streets. It wasn't much, but it was enough to cause a distraction. The aliens, who had thought humanity incapable of resistance, were caught off guard. They weren't prepared for this kind of fight. That moment was the turning point. The small group of human resistance fighters didn't wait for the governments to act. They began to rally people, train them, and show them how to use everyday items as weapons. They were the first to realize that humanity's true strength lay not in its technology, but in its ability to adapt and survive. As the alien fleet continued its destruction, human ingenuity sparked a glimmer of hope. The resistance became larger, growing by the day as more and more civilians joined the fight. They turned to their surroundings, picking up anything they could find. Streetlights became blinding weapons. Scrap metal was sharpened into knives. Even kitchen utensils were transformed into tools of destruction. Anything that could be used to fight back, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, became part of the human resistance. The aliens, meanwhile, had no idea what they were up against. They were used to facing technologically superior species, but Earth was different. The humans didn't have advanced technology, but they had something that the aliens couldn't understand: a will to survive, a determination to protect their home. And most of all, they had the ability to turn anything into a weapon. The first large-scale counterattack came when a group of resistance fighters used a large construction vehicle to ram through the defenses of an alien base. The Tellurian invaders were completely unprepared for this kind of attack. A simple bulldozer had become a battering ram, smashing through their defenses and creating chaos in their ranks. The humans didn't stop there. They used everything around them to keep up the pressure, forcing the invaders into a defensive position. But the aliens were not going to give up easily. They had technology far beyond anything humanity had ever seen. Yet as they struggled to understand how their advanced weapons and tactics could be countered by a group of people using nothing but tools and the environment, something started to shift. The aliens had assumed they were the masters of the universe, their technology unstoppable. They laughed at humanity, thinking they would quickly crush Earth and move on to the next world. But they had underestimated the one thing that made humans dangerous: their adaptability. Every object was a weapon in humanity's hands. The tide of battle was turning, and the aliens were beginning to realize they had made a grave mistake. The question now was not if humanity would survive, but how long the aliens could hold on before they were overthrown by the very species they had dismissed as weak. And as the resistance continued to grow, the world began to unite. Earth was no longer just a target. It was a force to be reckoned with. Humanity had a message to send. They would not go down without a fight. As the days passed, humanity's resistance began to form into something far more organized than anyone had imagined. The invaders, once so confident in their technology and superiority, were now facing an enemy that was becoming increasingly harder to defeat. Every street, every alley, every neighborhood became a battlefield. The once proud alien fleet, which had descended with such overwhelming power, was starting to face setbacks. The alien commanders were beginning to notice something troubling. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were adapting and innovating at an alarming rate. In the wake of the first successful counterattack, the resistance made its move. What had started as a small group of fighters experimenting with basic tools and everyday objects had quickly grown into a massive underground network. From the largest cities to the smallest rural towns, humanity began to realize that their survival didn't rely on advanced technology, but rather their creativity and ability to think outside the box. The world's greatest minds weren't sitting idle. They were figuring out how to turn everyday items into instruments of destruction. It was a moment of hope and clarity for the human race. They had discovered a strength that no one, not even the invaders, had anticipated. Simple things, old cars, discarded pieces of scrap metal, or even pipes and wires, could be repurposed into weapons capable of destroying alien tech. The resistance leaders understood that if they could continue to use their surroundings in innovative ways, they had a real chance at winning. The first large-scale operation launched by the resistance took place in the ruins of what was once downtown Chicago. The city had already suffered severe damage from the alien assault. Skyscrapers lay in heaps of rubble, and the streets were littered with debris. But this once great city was about to become the site of the most significant strike against the invaders yet. The human fighters used the broken remains of the city as cover, making their move under the cover of darkness. A convoy of modified cars, trucks, and even buses rolled silently through the wreckage. These vehicles, once used for everyday transport, had been stripped and transformed into deadly machines. Heavy-duty tires were replaced with reinforced ones, allowing them to roll over obstacles. Steel beams and jagged pieces of metal were bolted onto the sides to create makeshift armor. The most surprising modification, however, was the large, crude-looking catapults they had attached to the backs of trucks, large enough to launch enormous stones and debris, hurling them toward alien forces with deadly accuracy. The invasion had taken a toll on the alien fleet's defenses. The Tellieri were used to high-tech warfare, but they weren't prepared for a large number of human fighters equipped with nothing but makeshift weapons and a burning desire to survive. When the convoy arrived at their target, an alien supply depot hidden deep inside the city, the aliens were caught off guard. They didn't expect a direct assault from what they perceived as primitive humans. As the convoy's catapults launched massive chunks of rubble and debris into the heart of the alien compound, explosions rang out, sending shockwaves through the city. The Tellieri soldiers scrambled to defend themselves, but it was too late. The humans had found a way to turn a broken city into their battlefield. The alien forces began to retreat, unable to respond to this unconventional warfare. The humans, using the very streets and buildings the aliens had destroyed, turned the tide of the battle. By the end of the night, the supply depot was in ruins, and the resistance had scored their most significant victory to date. The news of the attack spread quickly, and with it, the hope that the aliens could be defeated. Humanity's morale surged. It wasn't just a handful of guerrilla fighters anymore. The entire planet seemed to be united in this fight. Ordinary civilians became soldiers. Teachers, scientists, factory workers, and children all pitched in, offering their expertise, tools, and ideas. Every person, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant their contribution, was now part of something much bigger, a worldwide resistance movement. But the aliens, despite their initial shock, were not willing to give up. The invaders had underestimated humanity's resourcefulness before, but they would not make the same mistake again. The Tellieri command leaders met in a vast warship orbiting Earth, their minds racing as they considered their next move. Their initial superiority was slipping away, and they could not afford to let Earth become a symbol of defiance to the rest of the galaxy. The aliens knew they had to take stronger action. They began to focus on neutralizing the human resistance, targeting the regions where the most damage had been done. But they also started to understand that the humans were not simply fighting with weapons, they were fighting with their minds. The Tellieri commanders knew that as long as the humans continued to think creatively, they would keep finding new ways to fight back. They realized that this wasn't a war of technology, it was a war of willpower. In response, the invaders escalated their attacks. The Tellieri unleashed their most advanced weaponry, deploying powerful energy cannons that devastated entire cities. They released giant, machine-like creatures designed for ground combat, hoping to crush the human fighters once and for all. The machines were nearly indestructible, towering over the remnants of human forces. The resistance fighters, however, didn't back down. Instead, they began using the very machines the aliens had sent against them. In a particularly daring move, the resistance hacked into one of the Tellieri's own machines, turning it against its creators. Using a mixture of alien technology they had scavenged from fallen ships and their own ingenious modifications, the humans managed to take control of a massive war machine. The sight of the machine, once a symbol of the alien invaders' power, being used by humans as a weapon of retaliation, sent a clear message to the Tellieri. Humanity was not as helpless as they thought. The resistance continued to grow, and soon, the human forces had their own military-grade equipment, though it was still a far cry from the advanced weaponry the aliens possessed. But humanity's ingenuity had leveled the playing field. Every day, more and more ordinary objects were turned into deadly instruments of war. A child's bicycle became a fast-moving vehicle used to plant bombs. Farmers used tractor plows to rip through alien lines. Street signs were turned into spears and shields, and broken glass became deadly shrapnel. The human race was fighting a war of survival, but it was also proving something crucial to the universe. The Tellieri had thought they could conquer Earth, because they believed that technology and brute force were the only ways to win. What they failed to realize was that humanity had something far more powerful than advanced weapons: the ability to adapt, to use anything and everything around them to fight back. The invaders had laughed at the humans at first. Now they were beginning to see that humanity's greatest weapon was its mind, and the determination to never give up. The war was far from over, but the humans had proven something the universe would never forget. Every object was a weapon in humanity's hands. The battle for Earth intensified with every passing day. What had once been a fractured and desperate resistance was now becoming a united, powerful force. Humanity's resourcefulness, ingenuity, and sheer will to survive had become their most potent weapons, and the alien invaders, who had laughed at the humans at the beginning of the conflict, were now facing the full brunt of humanity's resolve. Every corner of the Earth was alive with resistance, from the quiet rural villages to the bustling cities, where everyday objects continued to be transformed into instruments of war. Humanity's ability to improvise and adapt had proven to be a game-changer. The alien forces, who relied on high-tech weaponry, were struggling to keep up with an enemy they couldn't predict. They thought they were battling an inferior species, but now they were up against something far more dangerous: an unpredictable, creative, and fiercely determined enemy. Earth's fighters were no longer limited to just guerrilla tactics. They were beginning to develop more organized and strategic operations, carefully planned and executed with precision. In one of the most daring operations of the war, a group of resistance fighters managed to infiltrate an alien base hidden deep beneath the Earth's surface. Using a combination of underground tunnels, homemade explosives, and stolen alien tech, they had managed to bypass the security systems that protected the base. What they discovered there would change the course of the war. Hidden away in the facility were not only advanced alien weapons, but also detailed maps of Earth's cities, military installations, and vital resources. The humans had stumbled upon a treasure trove of information. Armed with this knowledge, they began to plan their next move. The next phase of the war would be one of direct retaliation. If they could strike at the heart of the alien forces, they could begin to turn the tide once and for all. Using the stolen alien blueprints, the resistance began to build their own version of the advanced weaponry that had once been out of their reach. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to start turning the balance in their favor. They began to produce energy weapons, small-scale versions of the ones the aliens had used to destroy cities. These weapons, though still crude by alien standards, were deadly in the hands of humanity. A new kind of warfare was emerging, one that was unpredictable and impossible for the aliens to anticipate. As the human forces began to gain ground, the alien command realized they had made a fatal mistake in underestimating humanity. The Tellari had assumed that their advanced technology and military superiority would be enough to crush Earth in a matter of days. They hadn't expected humanity to fight back with such innovation, and they certainly hadn't anticipated the speed at which the humans were adapting. Now, with every new weapon they built, humanity's chances of survival were increasing, and the aliens knew it. One of the largest offensives launched by the Resistance involved taking down one of the alien motherships hovering high above the Earth. It had been an imposing symbol of the invaders' power, but humanity was learning to think outside the box. Using the alien tech they had stolen, the Resistance modified one of their own ships, transforming it into a vessel capable of infiltrating the massive mothership. A small group of elite fighters, armed with nothing but their wits and the advanced weapons they had developed, infiltrated the mothership's defenses. It was a dangerous mission, and the odds were against them. The humans had no idea what to expect when they boarded the ship, but they knew one thing: they had to take it down if they were going to win the war. As they made their way through the alien ship's labyrinthine halls, they encountered traps and high-tech security systems, but the humans had learned to adapt. They used the same skills they had developed back on Earth: improvisation, creativity, and teamwork, to bypass the security measures. The turning point came when the team reached the core of the mothership. The Telluri had underestimated the humans once again. The fighters, using a combination of alien explosives and Earth-made technology, set the ship's core to overload. As the countdown began, the team made their escape, knowing that they had delivered a crippling blow to the invaders. The mothership exploded in a massive fireball, sending shockwaves through the alien fleet. The Telluri had lost one of their most powerful ships, and a symbol of their dominance over Earth. The explosion sent a clear message to the aliens. Humanity was not to be underestimated. They could adapt, they could fight back, and most importantly, they could win. The aliens had thought they were the masters of the universe, but they had been proven wrong. The human race was showing the universe that even the most advanced technology could be defeated by sheer determination and the will to survive. The alien leadership began to panic. With each victory, humanity's resistance grew stronger, more coordinated, and more powerful. The Telluri knew that their days on Earth were numbered. But the humans weren't about to let up. As the resistance gained momentum, they made it clear to the aliens that their warships, their technology, and their weapons would no longer protect them. Humanity had learned to fight on their terms, and the aliens were now the ones who had to adapt. The battle for Earth had become a war of attrition, with humanity slowly wearing down the invaders. They had come to understand something that the Telluri never could. Every object was a weapon in humanity's hands. Whether it was a broken pipe, an old piece of machinery, or an everyday household item, anything could be used to fight back. The creativity and innovation of humanity had made them the most dangerous species in the universe. And as the tide of the war continued to shift, the alien forces realized something that sent a chill through their ranks. They had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated the power of human ingenuity. And now, they were paying the price. The final battles were near, and the aliens had no idea what to expect. Humanity was fighting not just to survive, but to prove to the universe that no species could stand against the power of human will. The aliens had laughed at humans at first, but soon they would learn the hard truth. Earth was no longer a place to conquer. It was a force to be reckoned with, and humanity would never back down. The battle for Earth had reached a critical juncture. Humanity, once seen as weak and insignificant, had become a force to be reckoned with. The alien invaders, who had arrived with overwhelming power and confidence, were now reeling from the constant barrage of human ingenuity. Every day, humanity found new ways to turn the tide of the war. What started as a desperate, makeshift resistance had evolved into an organized and highly effective military force. The invaders, once the undisputed masters of the galaxy, were beginning to realize that they had made a fatal error in underestimating the human race. The resistance, now fully aware of their enemy's weaknesses, began to push the offensive, using every resource at their disposal, from alien technology to repurposed everyday objects. The humans began striking at the heart of the alien operations. They had learned to fight a war of adaptation, where each move was unpredictable and every corner held a new weapon. From makeshift grenades to modified vehicles, humanity had created a vast arsenal out of the most ordinary items, and with every success, their confidence grew. The next big operation was to strike at the Alien Command Center, a vast and heavily fortified facility hidden in the remote mountains of what was once the Swiss Alps. The command center was the brain of the alien invasion, a place where their leaders controlled everything from strategic decisions to the deployment of their advanced weaponry. If the resistance could infiltrate and disable the command center, they would cripple the alien war effort. The operation was carefully planned. A team of highly trained resistance fighters, including former soldiers, scientists, and even engineers, was assembled. Their task was simple: infiltrate the facility, destroy the communication systems, and sabotage the alien command structure. But as with every mission in this war, nothing was simple. The resistance fighters approached the command center under the cover of night, using the terrain to their advantage. The mountains were treacherous, and the facility was guarded by advanced alien security systems. But the humans had a secret weapon, technology they had scavenged from downed alien ships and reverse-engineered to bypass the security measures. As they neared the entrance, the team split into smaller units, each with their own mission. Some would disable the perimeter alarms, while others would plant explosives on the facility's power grid. It was a high-risk operation, but the humans had come to realize that risk was something they were willing to take. Inside the facility, the Telluri were unaware of the impending assault. Their commanders sat in their control rooms, confident that their advanced surveillance systems would detect any intrusion. What they didn't know was that humanity had learned to fight without being seen. The team of resistance fighters moved, like shadows, silent and swift, using the aliens' own technology against them. They disabled cameras, hacked into control systems, and bypassed security gates, all with the same tools and ingenuity that had allowed them to survive so far. It wasn't long before the first wave of explosions rocked the command center. The humans had successfully planted charges on the facility's power grid, causing a massive power surge. Lights flickered, alarms blared, and the Telluri soldiers scrambled to react. But the humans were already inside, moving quickly to their next target, the communication array. The facility's communication network was the key to the aliens' ability to coordinate their forces on Earth. If the humans could sever the connection, they could stop the alien fleet from responding to any of the Resistance's movements. As the Resistance fighters moved deeper into the complex, they encountered pockets of alien soldiers. The humans had learned to fight under pressure, using their environment and their surroundings to their advantage. They used alien weapons against the invaders and even improvised makeshift traps to slow down the alien soldiers. It was clear that the humans weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting to win. As the communication array was destroyed and the alien defenses began to falter, the Resistance fighters set the stage for the final blow. The mission was nearing completion, but the aliens were beginning to regroup. They had underestimated humanity's ability to disrupt their systems, but now they had to face the consequences of their mistake. The final stage of the mission was the most dangerous. With their power grid down and their communications severed, the alien leadership began to panic. They knew they had to neutralize the human threat quickly. The Telluri Command deployed a series of advanced war machines, heavily armored, heavily armed, and capable of laying waste to anything in their path. But the Resistance fighters were ready for them. They had already made preparations to deal with these machines. Using the same creativity that had defined humanity's resistance, the fighters turned the alien weapons against their creators. One by one, the war machines were hacked, disabled, and destroyed. The Resistance fighters had learned to adapt, to think on their feet, and to use every tool at their disposal. It wasn't just about brute force. It was about turning the enemy's own strength against them. As the final war machine fell, the Resistance fighters made their way to the heart of the facility, where the alien commanders were hiding. They had come to destroy the command center. And that was exactly what they did. A massive explosion rocked the facility, sending debris flying in every direction. The humans had achieved what seemed impossible. They had struck at the very core of the alien invasion, and they had done it using nothing but their wits, their creativity, and their refusal to back down. The news of the attack spread quickly, and it sent shockwaves through the alien fleet. The Telluri were no longer certain of their victory. The Resistance had proven that humanity could fight back and win. The Telluri had underestimated humanity before, but now they were facing a force they could no longer ignore. With their command center destroyed and their leadership in disarray, the aliens began to realize they were losing the war. The final phase of humanity's counteroffensive had begun. The invaders could no longer rely on their superior technology. It was no longer a war of advanced weapons and machines. It was a war of willpower. And the humans were determined to win. The aliens had laughed at humanity when they first arrived. Now they were starting to understand the true power of the human race. Every object, no matter how simple, was a weapon in humanity's hands. And with each victory, the universe was beginning to see that no matter how advanced the enemy, Humanity would always find a way to fight back. The war was far from over, but the aliens had learned an important lesson. They had underestimated the most dangerous weapon in the universe, the human spirit. The war had entered its final decisive stages. Humanity, once on the brink of extinction, was now on the offensive, pushing the alien invaders back with relentless determination. The Tellari, once so confident in their overwhelming superiority, were now on the defensive, scrambling to regroup in the face of a threat they could no longer ignore. Humanity's victory was no longer just a possibility. It was becoming inevitable. Every corner of the earth was alive with resistance, from the smallest towns to the major cities, and the invaders could feel the weight of their looming defeat. The resistance forces had come a long way from the days of makeshift weapons and desperate guerrilla tactics. They were now an organized, well-equipped fighting force, capable of striking deep into the heart of the alien fleet. What the Tellari had once dismissed as insignificant, the human spirit, had proven to be the most powerful weapon in the universe. As the resistance began to focus its efforts on the final push, it became clear that humanity had not only adapted to the alien technology, but had mastered it. One of the most daring operations of the war was the final assault on the alien homeworld, a mission so perilous that only the most experienced and fearless soldiers would volunteer. The goal was clear: to strike at the core of the alien empire and cripple their ability to continue the invasion. The resistance fighters had one chance to pull it off, and they knew the stakes were higher than ever before. If they failed, humanity would lose everything. But failure was no longer an option. The assault team, a mix of seasoned veterans and new recruits, set out in a fleet of modified human warships. Their ships were not the most advanced in terms of raw power, but they were nimble and highly adaptable, perfect for the kind of fast, hit-and-run tactics that had become humanity's hallmark. The journey to the alien homeworld was long, and the resistance fighters knew they would face heavy opposition once they arrived. But they had prepared for this moment for years. As the fleet neared the alien planet, they encountered a wall of defenses unlike anything they had faced before. The Tellari had deployed their most advanced warships and automated drones to protect their homeworld, and the space around the planet was filled with a dense web of force fields and heavy artillery. But the humans had come prepared. They used everything they had learned from their previous encounters with the Tellari to find weaknesses in the enemy's defenses. In one of the most audacious moves of the war, a group of human pilots flew their ships through the tightest gaps in the alien defense grid, avoiding laser fire and explosive traps with expert precision. The Tellari had never expected such a direct assault. Their warships, designed to defeat conventional forces, were struggling to deal with the unpredictable and relentless human tactics. But humanity had one advantage the Tellari had overlooked: the ability to improvise and adapt in real time. As the human fleet neared the alien planet, they launched a series of coordinated strikes aimed at disabling the alien homeworld's most critical infrastructure, its power generators, communication hubs, and defensive installations. The Tellari tried to retaliate with everything they had, but the humans were always one step ahead, using the Tellari's own advanced weapons and technology against them. It was a battle of wits as much as it was of firepower. The humans had learned to turn every object into a weapon, from scavenged alien drones to simple tools found on their warships. Even the smallest, most unassuming items had become deadly instruments in their hands. The ingenuity of humanity knew no bounds. Every soldier knew that their ability to think quickly and adapt to the ever-changing conditions of battle was what would decide the outcome of the war. The final assault on the Tellari capital was a race against time. With their power systems disabled and their communications jammed, the alien leadership had no way to organize a defense. The resistance fighters made their way into the heart of the alien command center, where the Tellari leaders had gathered in a desperate bid to repel the attack. The humans fought their way through the facility, using everything they had at their disposal to take down the alien forces one by one. But the Tellari were not going down without a fight. As the humans reached the heart of the command center, they encountered the last line of defense, The Telluri's elite soldiers, genetically engineered to be stronger, faster, and more deadly than anything humanity had ever faced. But even these formidable opponents were no match for the creativity and resourcefulness of the human soldiers. In the final moments of the battle, the last of the Telluri leaders was cornered. As he looked into the eyes of his human captors, he realized the truth. Humanity was not just another species to be conquered. They were a force unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The alien invaders had laughed at the humans when they first arrived, dismissing them as weak and unworthy of any serious consideration. But now, as the Telluri Empire lay in ruins, they had learned the hard way. Humanity was not to be underestimated. With the Telluri leadership defeated and their command center destroyed, the war was effectively over. The human resistance had not only driven the invaders from Earth, but had crippled their entire empire. It was a victory that would be remembered for generations, not just by those who fought in the war, but by the entire universe. The humans had proven that no matter how advanced the enemy, no matter how superior their technology, there was one thing that could never be defeated: the human will to survive. As the surviving Telluri forces retreated into the farthest reaches of the galaxy, the human soldiers stood victorious. They had done the impossible. They had turned the tide of a war they were never supposed to win. The aliens had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, to innovate, and to overcome. They had laughed at the humans, but now they were gone. And humanity stood tall. The war was over, Earth was free. And the universe had learned a valuable lesson: never underestimate the power of humanity. Every object, every tool, every piece of technology, everything was a weapon in humanity's hands. And now the human race would stand as a force to be reckoned with in the galaxy, a force that would never back down, never surrender, and never forget the lessons of their victory. The aliens had laughed at humans before, but now the universe had witnessed what humans could do when they fought for their survival, and they would never laugh again.